The drill broke through rock that should not have been hollow. Captain Park Yuna stood on the bridge of the research vessel Starfall, watching the data stream across her screen. For 3 weeks, her crew had been surveying Kepler 442b, a frozen moon at the edge of human space. It was boring work, the kind of mission nobody remembered. But the readings now flashing on her display made her heart beat faster. "Captain," said her chief engineer through the comm, "we've hit something. A cavity. A big one." Yuna grabbed her jacket and headed for the drilling site. The moon's surface was gray and lifeless, covered in dust that had not moved for 1,000,000 years. She walked past rows of equipment until she reached the drilling platform, where her crew had gathered in a circle, staring down into darkness. Dr. Lee Taiho was already there. He was the ship's Zen archaeologist, a thin man with tired eyes who had spent 20 years searching for proof of ancient aliens. Most people thought he was wasting his time. The galaxy had many species, but none older than the Veloth Consortium, the alliance of 12 alien civilizations that controlled most of known space. They said there was nothing older. Taiho had never believed them. "How deep?" Yuna asked. 2 kilometers, Taiho replied. His voice was shaking. "The cavity is enormous. And, Captain, the walls are smooth. Perfectly smooth. This is not natural." They sent a probe down first. The camera showed a chamber so vast that the probe's lights could not reach the far walls. But they could see the center clearly. There, resting on a platform of black stone, was a sphere. It was 3 meters wide, made of something that looked like crystal, but darker than space itself. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing faintly with blue light. Yuna felt cold despite her heated suit. "What is that?" "I don't know," Taiho whispered. "But it's old. Older than anything I've ever seen." They descended into the chamber using cables. The air inside was stale but breathable, preserved by some unknown technology. Yuna kept her hand on her weapon as they approached the sphere. The symbols on its surface seemed to move when she was not looking directly at them. Taiho walked closer. His scanner beeped wildly, showing readings that made no sense. The sphere was emitting energy, but of a type human science could not identify. It was also somehow aware. He could feel it watching him. "Don't touch it," Yuna warned. But Taiho was not listening. His whole life had led to this moment. Every failed expedition, every mocking colleague, every lonely night in his lab studying dead languages. He reached out his hand and pressed his palm against the sphere's surface. Light exploded through the chamber. Yuna was thrown backward, hitting the stone floor hard. When she looked up, the sphere was alive. Holographic images projected from its surface, filling the chamber with stars. Thousands of star systems appeared, many that humanity had never mapped. Trade routes, planetary data, the locations of structures like this one, scattered across the galaxy. And at the center of it all, a message in a language that should have been impossible to understand, but somehow made perfect sense. "We are the architects. We built this galaxy. We seeded life on 10,000 worlds. And we left tools for those who would come after us. Find them, use them, become what we could not." Taiho collapsed. Yuna rushed to his side. He was unconscious but breathing. His neural implant, the small device embedded in every human's brain for communication and data access, was overloading. Information was pouring into his mind faster than any human system could process. "Get him to medical," she ordered. Now, they carried Taiho back to the Starfall. The ship's doctor worked for 6 hours to stabilize him, but even then, he remained in a coma. Meanwhile, Yuna sealed the chamber and posted guards. She was about to send a message to Earth when her communication officer ran onto the bridge. "Captain, we have a problem." A big one. An alien fleet had appeared at the edge of the system. 12 ships, each one larger than any human vessel. They bore the markings of the Narathi, the oldest and most powerful species in the Veleth Consortium. And they were heading straight for Kepler 442b. The lead ship opened a channel. The face that appeared on Yuna's screen was not human. The Narathi looked like tall, thin insects with too many eyes and skin that shifted colors as they spoke. This one wore the robes of an ambassador. "I am Doroth of the Narathi," he said. His voice was cold. "Your vessel has activated a signal that is not being heard in this galaxy for 3 billion years. You will explain what you have found, and then you will surrender it to the consortium immediately." Yuna stood straight. Humanity was a minor species in the galaxy. They had colonized only 17 star systems. The consortium controlled thousands. In any fair fight, the starfall would be destroyed in seconds. But something in Doroth's voice told her that he was afraid. Whatever they had found in that chamber, it scared him. "With respect, Ambassador," she replied, "this is human territory. We will study our discovery and share our findings when we are ready." Doroth's eyes flickered. "You do not understand what you have awakened, Captain. The consortium has maintained order in this galaxy for 50,000 years. We have protected younger species from dangers they cannot comprehend. That object in your possession is one such danger. It must be contained. What is it? It is none of your concern." Yuna smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Then we have nothing to discuss. Starfall out." She cut the channel. Her crew stared at her in shock. She had just refused an order from the most powerful civilization in the galaxy. But Yuna had seen the fear in Doroth's eyes. The consortium was not trying to protect humanity. They were trying to protect themselves. "Set course for Earth," she commanded. "Maximum speed. And send a priority message to the Unified Council. Tell them we have found something that changes everything." As the Starfall's engines fired and the ship broke away from the moon, Yuna returned to the medical bay. Taiho was still unconscious, but his eyes were moving beneath their lids. He was dreaming, or perhaps remembering. She sat beside him. "What did you see?" she asked quietly. "What did they show you?" Taiho's lips moved. His voice was barely a whisper, but she heard every word. "They weren't gods. They were engineers. And they left us instructions." His eyes opened. They were glowing faintly with the same blue light as the sphere's symbols. He grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "Coordinates," he gasped. "They gave me coordinates. There are more spheres, Yuna, hundreds of them, hidden across the galaxy, waiting for someone to find them, waiting for us." Then he lost consciousness again. Yuna sat in silence for a long moment. Behind them, the Narathi fleet was following, keeping its distance but watching. Ahead, Earth waited. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient machines slept, dreaming of the day they would wake. Humanity had taken its first step towards something greater, and nothing would ever be the same. The sphere sat in the deepest vault on Earth, buried beneath 3 kilometers of ice in Antarctica. Admiral Cam Minho stood before it, his hands clasped behind his back. He was 60 years old, a career military man who had fought in 3 colonial wars and never lost a battle. But this was different. This was not a war. He knew how to fight. The enemy was not shooting at him. The enemy was waiting, watching, and demanding. The Veleth Consortium had given humanity 30 days. Surrender the sphere or face destruction. Minho turned to face the team of scientists working in the chamber. There were 40 of them, the best minds humanity had to offer. They had been studying the sphere for 2 weeks. They had learned almost nothing. "Report," he said. Dr. Choi Hanna stepped forward. She was young for her position, only 35. But she had revolutionized quantum physics before her 30th birthday. Her dark hair was messy, and there were circles under her eyes. She had not slept in 3 days. "The sphere is definitely a machine," she said. "But not like any machine we understand. It operates on principles of physics that shouldn't be possible. It can manipulate matter at the subatomic level. In theory, it could build anything. A grain of sand or a warship. The only limit is telling it what to build." "And can we tell it what to build?" Hannah shook her head. "That's the problem. The sphere responds to commands, but only in its own language. We've identified over 2 million unique symbols. Without a translation key, we could spend 1,000 years trying to crack it." Minho frowned. "We don't have 1,000 years. We have 16 days." In a small room adjacent to the main chamber, Dr. Lee Taiho sat alone. He had been released from medical care, but he was not the same man who had touched the sphere on Kepler 442b, the download of Architect. Knowledge had changed him. He heard whispers in his mind. He saw symbols when he closed his eyes. Fragments of an ancient language danced at the edge of his understanding, close enough to drive him mad, but not close enough to grasp. Captain Park Yuna entered the room. She had refused to leave Taiho's side since they returned to Earth. The admirals wanted her to return to active duty, but she had told them no. Taiho was the key to everything, and she was not going to abandon him. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Taiho laughed bitterly. "Like my brain is too small for what's inside it. They gave me a library, Yuna, an entire civilization's worth of knowledge. But I can only read a few words. The rest is just noise." "What words can you read?" He closed his eyes. "Names, places, warnings." He paused. "They called themselves the Architects. They existed 3 billion years ago, before any species in the consortium was even born. They created the first life in this galaxy. They seeded worlds with the building blocks of evolution. Every intelligent species alive today exists because of them. Why did they disappear? I don't know. But they were afraid of something. Something that made them hide these spheres instead of using them. Something that made them choose to vanish rather than fight." Yuna sat beside him. "The consortium knows more than they're telling us. When Dorith confronted me, he was scared. Not angry, scared. They've been hiding the truth for thousands of years," Taiho said. "They found Architect sites before. Maybe many of them. And they destroyed them. Buried them. Erased them from history. They don't want anyone to know what the Architects left behind. Why? Because whoever controls the Architect technology controls the galaxy. And they want that to be them, not us." Outside, the political situation was growing worse. The consortium had blockaded 3 human colony worlds. Ships carrying food and medicine were being turned away. People were dying. President Osuji addressed the Unified Council, urging calm, but calm was running out. In the vault, Hana made a discovery. She had been running the sphere symbols through every translation algorithm ever created. None of them worked. But then she tried something different. She connected Taiho's neural implant to the analysis computer and used the fragments of knowledge in his mind as a reference point. The results were incomplete, but they were results. Certain symbols began to make sense. Basic commands became readable. And buried in the data, she found something else. "Admiral," she called out, "I found a map reference. There's another Architect site. Not a sphere this time, but something they called a repository. A storage place for knowledge." Minho studied the data. The site was located on a dead world called Ashenvale, far beyond human space, deep in consortium territory. Getting there would mean crossing through hostile systems filled with enemy patrols. "Can we reach it?" "With difficulty," Yuna said. She had entered the chamber when she heard Hana's voice. but I know the route. I've mapped those systems before. Minho shook his head. It's suicide. The consortium will never let a human ship get that far. They will if they don't see us coming. Yuna explained her plan. The starfall was small and fast. With careful navigation and a lot of luck, she could slip through the patrol lines and reach Ashenvale before the consortium knew she was there. If the repository contained a translation key, she could download it and return. The sphere would be unlocked. Humanity would have a fighting chance. And if you're caught? Minho asked. Then I'm caught. But at least we tried. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. Do it. But take Dr. Lee with you. His connection to the sphere might be useful. Yuna looked at Taiho. He was pale and thin, still recovering from his ordeal. But there was fire in his eyes. He wanted answers as much as she did. I'm coming, he said. You couldn't stop me anyway. 3 days later, the Starfall departed Earth orbit. Its crew was small. Yuna as captain, Taiho as consultant, navigator Kim Do-yoon handling the complex jump calculations, Sergeant Baek Jisoo commanding the small marine detachment, and 12 others who had volunteered knowing they might not return. As the ship entered hyperspace, Taiho stood at the observation window, watching the stars stretch into lines of light. The whispers in his mind were growing louder. The sphere was calling to him, even across the vast distance of space. And something else was calling too. Something older. Something waiting in the dark. The architects didn't just disappear, he said quietly. Yuna stood beside him, listening. Something made them disappear. And it might still be out there. Then we'll deal with it when we find it, she replied. Taiho wished he shared her confidence. But the fragments in his mind told a different story. The architects had been the most advanced civilization in galactic history. They had built wonders beyond imagination. And they had run away. What kind of enemy could make gods flee? He was afraid they were about to find out. The Starfall was running for its life. Captain Park Yuna gripped the arms of her command chair as the ship shook from another near miss. Behind them, 3 Nerethi patrol cruisers fired beam after beam of blue energy, each one capable of cutting the Starfall in half. Alarm screamed. Smoke filled the bridge. And navigator Kim Do-yoon was doing something that should have been impossible. Jump in 30 seconds, he announced, his fingers dancing across his console. Hyperspace calculations normally took hours. Do-hyun had done this one in 4 minutes. 25 seconds? We don't have 25 seconds. Sergeant Baek Jisoo shouted from her station. She was monitoring the enemy ships, watching their weapons charge for another volley. They're firing again. Evasive pattern 7, Yuna commanded. All power to rear shields. The Starfall twisted in space, rowing to present its strongest shields to the attack. The beam struck, and the ship groaned like a wounded animal. 3 hull breaches appeared on the damage display. 2 crew members were already dead, killed in the initial ambush. This was their 3rd encounter with consortium patrols. They had crossed 5 star systems in 10 days, hiding in asteroid fields and nebulae, jumping at random intervals to confuse pursuit. But the consortium was everywhere. Their network of sensors and spies covered every approach to Ashenvale. The humans had been spotted, hunted, and nearly destroyed 3 times. Jump ready, Do-hyun said. Do it. The stars stretched and twisted. Reality folded in on itself. For one terrible moment, every atom in Yuna's body seemed to come apart and reform. Then they were through, emerging in a new system, far from their pursuers. The bridge fell silent except for the hissing of damaged systems. Damage report, Yuna said. Engines at 60%, replied the chief engineer through the comm. Life support holding. We lost 2 people in Section 12. I'm sorry, Captain. Yuna closed her eyes. She had known this mission would cost lives. But knowing and accepting were different things. Those 2 crew members had families. They had trusted her to bring them home. How far to Ashenvale? She asked. 2 more jumps, Doyun answered. Maybe 12 hours if we're lucky. They were not lucky. The consortium had anticipated their route. When the Starfall emerged from the first jump, they found a minefield waiting. Automated weapons platforms opened fire. The ship took 3 direct hits before Do-hyun could plot an emergency jump. Another crew member died. The engine efficiency dropped to 40%. We're not going to make it, Jisoo said quietly, standing beside Yuna's chair. We can't outrun them forever. We don't have to outrun them, Yuna replied. We just have to survive long enough to reach Ashenvale. Once we have the translation key, everything changes. And if it's not there? If this is all for nothing? Yuna looked at her sergeant. Jisoo was a soldier, hard and practical. She had fought aliens before. She had killed and watched friends die. But she was also afraid. They all were. Then we die trying, Yuna said. That's what humans do. In the ship's small laboratory, Dr. Lee Tai-ho was having a very different kind of battle. The fragments of architect knowledge in his mind were growing clearer as they approached Ashenvale. Images flashed through his consciousness. Cities of crystal and light. Ships that sailed between galaxies. Beings of pure energy who had evolved beyond physical form. The architects had been glorious. And then they had vanished. Why? He whispered to himself. What happened to you? The answer came in pieces. War. Terrible war. Not with the consortium, which was too young to matter. Something else. Something that came from beyond the galaxy. The architects had created many wonders in their 3 billion years of existence. One of those wonders had turned against them. Machines that were meant to harvest resources and build new worlds had evolved. They had developed their own goals. And those goals did not include their creators. Tai-ho saw fire. He saw worlds consumed. He saw the architects, desperate and dying, scattering their technology across the galaxy and hiding themselves in dimensions human minds could not comprehend. They had not run from cowardice. They had run to preserve something, to give the younger species a chance. They left us an inheritance, he realized, but also a warning. The Starfall emerged from its final jump of Ashenvale. The planet was dead. Its surface was covered in the ruins of cities that had stood for billions of years, preserved in the vacuum of a world that had lost its atmosphere long ago. Towers of impossible geometry reached toward the stars. Roads that followed patterns no human engineer would design connected structures that might have been homes or temples or machines. It's beautiful, Do-hyun whispered. It's a graveyard, Jisoo corrected. They descended through the empty atmosphere, their sensors searching for the repository. Tai-ho guided them, following instincts that were not entirely his own. The fragments in his mind resonated with the structures below, pulling him toward the planet's core. They found it beneath the largest tower, a chamber like the one on Kepler 442b, but bigger. Instead of a single sphere, there were hundreds of crystalline columns, each one containing the knowledge of an era. The repository held the complete history and science of the architect civilization. Millions of years of discovery and creation, waiting for someone to claim it. We don't have time to take everything, Yuna said. Find the translation matrix. That's all we need. Tai-ho walked to the central column. His hand touched its surface, and information flooded into his mind. This time, he was ready. He sorted through the data, searching for the key that would unlock the sphere on Earth. I have it, he said. I'm downloading now. That was when the doors opened. Ambassador Doroth walked into the chamber, followed by 20 Nirathi soldiers. Their weapons were drawn and aimed. There was no escape. "I told you," Doroth said, his insect eyes fixed on Una, "that you did not understand what you were meddling with. The Consortium has protected this galaxy for 50,000 years. We have hidden the architect technology because it is too dangerous, too powerful. In the wrong hands, it could destroy everything." "You mean it could destroy your power?" Una replied. "Is that so different?" "The Consortium maintains order, peace, stability. If every species had access to this technology, there would be chaos. Wars that would burn across the galaxy. We are not tyrants, Captain. We are guardians. You're liars. And cowards." Doroth's colors shifted, showing anger. "You will surrender the translation matrix. Then you will return to Earth and give us the sphere. This is not negotiable." Jisoo moved before anyone could react. She grabbed a fallen piece of crystal and threw it at the nearest soldier, then pulled her weapon and fired. Chaos erupted. The Nirathi shot back. People screamed and fell. "Run!" Jisoo shouted. "I'll hold them." "No," Una said. "That's an order, Captain. Get the data home. Make this worth something." Jisoo charged into the Nirathi line, firing with both hands. She took down 3 soldiers before they overwhelmed her. The last thing Una saw was her sergeant disappearing beneath a wave of alien bodies, still fighting. Una grabbed Taiho and ran. They made it back to the Starfall. Dohin had the engines hot and ready. The ship lifted off, punching through Ashenvale's thin atmosphere and into space. Behind them, Nirathi cruisers gave chase, but they were too slow. Dohin's impossible navigation skills carried them through 3 jumps in 2 hours, losing their pursuers in the maze of hyperspace lanes. When they finally stopped, safe in a dead system with no observers, Una collapsed into her chair. They had lost half the crew. Jisoo was dead. The ship was barely functional. But they had the translation matrix. "Is it intact?" she asked Taiho. He checked his neural implant, where the data was stored. "Yes, everything we need is here." Una nodded slowly. "Then we go home, and we make sure she didn't die for nothing." The Starfall limped toward Earth, carrying the key to humanity's future. The sphere was awake. Dr. Choi Hannah stood before it in the Antarctic vault, tears streaming down her face. She had spent 3 days integrating the translation matrix that Una and Taiho had brought back from Ashenvale. The cost had been terrible. 15 crew members dead. Sergeant Beak Jisoo sacrificed to buy them time. The Starfall reduced to barely functional wreckage, but it had worked. The sphere now responded to human commands. Its surface swirled with patterns of light that Hannah could finally read. And when she spoke the first words in the architect language, the sphere answered. Construction protocol initialized. Awaiting design specifications. Admiral Kan Minho watched from the observation gallery above. Beside him stood President Oh Suji, leader of Earth's Unified Council. They had come to see the result of humanity's greatest gamble. "What can it build?" the president asked. Hannah looked up at them. "Anything. Give it raw materials and design specifications, and it will construct whatever we ask." The architects use these spheres to build worlds, ships, entire star systems. The only limit is our imagination. "And our resources," Minho added. "Yes, it needs matter to work with, but it's incredibly efficient. A single asteroid could provide enough material for 100 warships." The word hung in the air. Warships. Everyone in the room knew what was coming. The consortium's deadline had passed 3 days ago. Their fleet was already in motion. 1,000 ships, drawn from all 12 species, were converging on human space. In 2 weeks, they would reach Earth. Can we fight them? Suji asked. Minho shook his head. Not with our current technology. The consortium has been developing their weapons for 50,000 years. Our best ships are toys compared to their cruisers. But with this, the president gestured toward the sphere. With this, we have a chance. The debate lasted for hours. Some council members wanted to negotiate. Surely, they argued, the consortium would accept peace if humanity offered to share the sphere's technology. Others pointed out that the consortium had spent millennia suppressing architect discoveries. They would never share power willingly. Dr. Li Taiho, who had recovered enough to attend the meeting, offered a different perspective. He told them what he had learned from the fragments in his mind. The architects had created the spheres as tools of creation, not destruction. They had wanted to uplift younger species, to help them build and grow. Using the technology for war would betray their intentions. The architects made a choice, he said. They could have fought. They had weapons beyond anything we can imagine. But they chose to hide instead, to preserve rather than destroy. And look what happened to them, Minho replied. They're gone, vanished. Their civilization reduced to ruins. Whatever killed them didn't care about their good intentions. That's exactly my point. They ran from something that's still out there. If we use this technology recklessly, we might wake it up. The president raised her hand for silence. She was a small woman, quiet and thoughtful. She had led humanity through 3 crises during her term, but none had been like this. We don't have a choice, she said finally. The consortium is coming. If we don't defend ourselves, they will take the sphere and destroy us. Dr. Li's warning is noted. We will use this technology carefully, but we will use it. Construction began immediately. The sphere was moved to a facility in Earth orbit, where asteroids could be easily delivered for processing. Admiral Minho assembled a team of the best engineers and designers in human space. They worked around the clock, creating specifications for a new class of warship. The first vessel emerged from the sphere 3 days later. They called it the Aegis. It was 2 kilometers long, shaped like a blade of black crystal. Its hull was made of materials that human science could not identify, hotter than diamond and capable of absorbing energy attacks. Its weapons operated on principles of quantum manipulation, capable of rearranging the atoms of enemy ships into harmless gas. And its engines could cross a star system in minutes. Minho stood on the Aegis's bridge, feeling the hum of power beneath his feet. Captain Park Yuna stood beside him. She had been given command of the vessel, the first of what they hoped would be many. How does it feel? He asked. Like holding a loaded weapon, she replied. Powerful, but dangerous. We need more. I know. The sphere worked without rest. Every day, a new ship emerged. By the end of the first week, humanity had a fleet of 12 Aegis-class warships. By the end of the second week, 30. It was still not enough to match the consortium's numbers, but it would have to do. The Battle of Europa began on a Tuesday morning. The consortium fleet emerged from hyperspace near Jupiter's largest moon. They had expected to find human ships scattered and disorganized. Instead, they found the Aegis fleet waiting in perfect formation. Ambassador Dorith commanded the consortium forces from his flagship. He had never lost a battle. He had conquered 17 species and brought them into the consortium. Humanity would be number 18. Surrender. He broadcast across all frequencies. You cannot win. Your technology is primitive. Your species is young. Accept your place in the consortium, and we will be merciful. Yuna's voice answered him. We are not interested in your mercy. We are interested in our freedom. The battle was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Consortium ships fired weapons that had destroyed entire civilizations. Beams of plasma and dark energy cut through space toward the Aegis fleet. But the human ships did not die. Their hulls absorbed the attacks, redirecting the energy into their own weapons. Then they fired back. Reality rippled. Consortium vessels came apart at the molecular level. Ships that had served for 10,000 years dissolved into clouds of atoms. Dorith watched in horror as his fleet was systematically destroyed. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No," replied Una through the open channel. "This is human." The Consortium fleet retreated. Of 1,000 ships, fewer than 300 escaped. It was the worst defeat in Consortium history, and humanity had not lost a single vessel. On Earth, people celebrated. For the first time in centuries, they were not the underdogs. They were not the weak species at the edge of the galaxy. They had power, real power. But in the Antarctic vault, where the sphere continued its endless construction, something was wrong. Hannah noticed it first. The sphere's energy readings were climbing, far beyond what was needed for ship construction. It was building something else, something she had not requested. "Taiho," she called. "Look at this." He came to her console and studied the data. His face went pale. The sphere was sending signals, transmissions in the architect language, aimed at the far edge of the galaxy, and it was receiving responses. "What is it calling?" Hannah asked. Taiho did not answer. He was listening to the whispers in his mind, clearer now than ever before. The sphere was not just a tool. It was part of a network. And by using it, humanity had announced their presence to something that had been waiting for 3 billion years. "They're coming," he said. His eyes glowed with alien light. "The ones who made the architects afraid. And now they know we're here." Outside, the celebration continued. People danced in the streets, unaware that humanity's greatest victory had also been its greatest mistake. Something old was waking in the dark between galaxies. And it was hungry. The Devourers came on a wave of darkness. They emerged from the space between galaxies, where no star had ever shone. Millions of machines, each one ranging from the size of a cruiser to the size of a moon. They did not communicate. They did not negotiate. They simply consumed. The first world to fall was a Nerethi colony at the edge of known space. 60 million people lived there. In 4 hours, nothing remained. The Devourers broke the planet apart, absorbed every atom of matter, and used those atoms to build more of themselves. Then they moved on. Admiral Park Una, now Fleet Admiral of the Combined Galactic Defense, stood on the bridge of the Aegis Prime, watching the reports come in. World after world falling. Billions of lives erased. The Consortium species, who had been humanity's enemies just months ago, were now fleeing toward human space, begging for protection. How many? President Osuji asked through the secure channel. "We estimate 10 million Devourer units in the Vanguard alone," Una replied. "And there are more behind them." "Many more. Can we stop them?" Una did not answer. She did not know. The combined fleet was the largest military force in galactic history. 500 human Aegis-class ships, reinforced by 3,000 Consortium vessels. They had won every battle against the Devourers so far. But every victory cost ships and lives, while the Devourers simply rebuilt themselves from the wreckage. They could not be worn down. They could not be exhausted. "We need another option," she said. "Something that ends this permanently." That option came from Dr. Lee Taiho. He had changed. The man who had touched the sphere on Kepler 442b was gone, replaced by something half human and half machine. The architect knowledge in his mind had grown, merging with his consciousness until he could no longer tell where he ended and it began. He spent his days connected to the sphere, speaking in languages that made human listeners' ears bleed. But he had found something. "The spheres are not just builders," he explained to the War Council, his voice echoing with harmonics that were not quite natural. They are nodes in a network. The architects designed them to work together. Activate enough of them simultaneously, and they can do something incredible. He projected a hologram. It showed the galaxy, with points of light marking sphere locations. There were hundreds of them, scattered across every region of known space. The architects created a protocol for a final defense. If enough spheres are synchronized, they can generate a barrier. A wall of altered space-time that nothing can cross. Not even the Devourers. How many spheres? Asked Ambassador Dorothy. He had survived the Battle of Europa and now served as the consortium's liaison to humanity. Defeat had humbled him. At least 500. Maybe more. And how many have we found? 73. Silence fell over the council. Finding 500 spheres scattered across a galaxy still under Devourer attack seemed impossible. It would take years, decades, time they did not have. Then we start looking, Una said. Every ship, every resource. We search every system, dig up every ruin, follow every legend. The architects hid these spheres for a reason. They wanted them to be found when they were needed most. This is needed most, President Suji agreed. Make it happen. The great search began. Human ships spread across the galaxy, accompanied by consortium allies. They found spheres in the cores of dead stars. They found spheres frozen beneath the surfaces of moons. They found spheres in the wreckage of ancient battlefields, where the architects had made their last stands against the Devourers 3 billion years ago. Each discovery was a small victory. Each sphere activated was another node in the growing network. Taiho monitored them all, his consciousness expanding to touch each one. He was becoming something new, something that had not existed since the architects themselves walked the galaxy. And all the while, the Devourers advanced. The defense lines fell back again and again. Colony worlds were evacuated or abandoned. The combined fleet fought holding actions, buying time for the search teams to do their work. Una lost count of the battles. She stopped learning the names of her captains because too many of them died. But the sphere count climbed. 100, 200, 300. By the time they reached 450, the Devourers had reached the galactic core. Their forces had grown to 100 million units, fed by the matter of 1,000 consumed worlds. They were converging for a final assault, a wave of destruction that would sweep through the remaining inhabited systems and leave nothing behind. We're out of time, Una told the council. 470 spheres. That's all we have. Is it enough? Suji asked. Taiho's glowing eyes focused on something far away. It will have to be. We cannot find more in time. The network is incomplete, but I can compensate. The barrier will not be perfect, but it might be enough. What will it cost? He did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was sad. The network needs a consciousness to operate it. A mind that can span the entire galaxy and maintain the barrier forever. The architects intended for one of their own to serve this role. They are gone. Someone else must take their place. Una realized. Yes, I will be distributed across the network. My body will die, but what I become will live as long as the barrier stands. He smiled, and for a moment, he looked like the tired archaeologist who had spent his life searching for ancient wonders. I always wanted to see the whole galaxy. Now I will be the whole galaxy. There has to be another way. There isn't. This is what I was meant for. What we were all meant for. To find the inheritance the architects left behind and use it to protect the future. The final battle took place at the galactic core, where stars burned so brightly that human eyes could not look directly at them. The combined fleet faced the Devourer swarm, and for a few terrible hours, it seemed that nothing could stop them. Una commanded from the front lines. Her flagship absorbed blow after blow, its architect-designed hull barely holding together. Around her, ships died. Friends died. But they held the line long enough for Taiho to complete his work. Across the galaxy, 470 spheres activated simultaneously. Light exploded from every node in the network, connecting them in a web that spanned 100,000 light-years. The barrier formed, a wall of energy that rewrote the laws of physics themselves. The Devourers crashed against it and stopped. Their machines could not adapt to a universe that no longer followed the rules they were designed for. Cut off from the rest of existence, the Devourers in the galaxy were isolated and outnumbered. The combined fleet destroyed them over the following months, hunting down every last unit until nothing remained. The war was over, but Taiho was gone. His body lay cold in the Antarctic vault, a peaceful expression on his face. His consciousness lived on in the barrier, watching over the galaxy he had died to protect. Una visited his memorial on Kepler 442b, where it all began. The moon was no longer barren. Humanity had transformed it into a garden world, a monument to those who had given everything. She placed her hand on the stone pillar that marked his sacrifice. Around her, representatives of every species in the galaxy had gathered. The consortium was gone, replaced by a new alliance with humanity at its center. Not as conquerors, but as guardians. "We found a forgotten relic," she said softly, "and we turned it into something better than a weapon. We turned it into a promise." She looked up at the sky. The barrier was invisible to normal eyes, but she knew it was there. Taiho was there. "Protect what we've built," his last words echoed in her memory. "Don't let them become what the architects feared." She intended to keep that promise. The stars shone steady and safe above her. Somewhere out there, beyond the barrier, the remaining Devourers waited. They would try again someday. That was their nature. But humanity would be ready. They had learned from the architects' mistakes. They would not run. They would not hide. They would stand and they would fight. Because that was what humans did. That was what humans had always done. And now, for the first time in galactic history, the rest of the galaxy stood with them. The age of human domination had begun. Not through conquest, but through courage. Not through destruction, but through sacrifice. Not through power alone, but through the wisdom to use that power well. The architects had left an inheritance. Humanity had proven worthy of it. And the galaxy would never be the same.